Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I am very excited to be reviewing the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive Call of Duty Ghost action figure from Jazwares. This figure is one of 1,000 made for the Jazwares booth at San Diego Comic-Con, and as you'll see in this video, it features some exclusive packaging as well as exclusive deco on the figure itself. Now I'm sure some of you might be kind of cringing at the fact that I am about to open a one of 1,000 San Diego Comic-Con exclusive figure, but I'm definitely not one of those people that keeps everything in the box, and this is going to be our first look at this brand new line of figures. Jazwares has just started this Call of Duty line. We have not gotten any of these figures in hand apart from this Comic-Con exclusive. There were some other reveals that I showed over on my Instagram of like the mainline releases from this new Call of Duty line, but those are going to all release much later in the year, and so I can't resist opening this one and getting our first taste of this brand new line. So as far as packaging goes, this box art is really nicely done. It's printed on some sort of foil, so it has a really nice sheen and gloss to it. But then you have these areas that are more satin finish, and so things like the Call of Duty logo and this cutout of Ghost really pop against that more matte finish, and I do like how that looks here. Bringing it around to the back here, we have a plain back just with a few little minor details just here and there around it. On the side, a big Call of Duty logo emblazoned there, and what's really cool is that this is actually a sleeve hiding the figure within. So we just slide this out, and then we have our first look at the new Call of Duty Ghost figure. Now, it's my understanding that this packaging here without the sleeve is pretty much what we're going to be seeing on store shelves. Some variation of this mostly rectangular box, little shaved corner there, Call of Duty logo, picture window with the action figure and all of its accessories. On the side, you have this nice artwork of the character Ghost. Coming around to the back, you have another, what I believe is a game render of the character. I don't think that this is the action figure, because I think you'd see some joints there. I have a feeling like on the mainline releases for these figures, on the back, you might not see this, but instead see a lineup of other characters in that wave. That seems to be more the trend when it comes to figures you'll find in stores. This one being an SDCC exclusive, you're going to have some variations and maybe a little bit more premium elements to the individual box art. But with all that being said, let's do the unthinkable and unbox this figure, take a look at what he comes with, all of his articulation, accessories, and all that, and then also do some comparisons between this figure and other realistic military type figures in the 1/12 scale. And here he is, all out of the packaging. It's really exciting to have a brand new figure line in hand. It's been a while since there's been anything truly brand new to the market as far as action figures goes and as far as my personal collection goes. So having this figure in hand, an all new sculpt, an all new license from a company, it's pretty exciting, and we're gonna get into all the great details going on with this new figure. So I gotta say, my first impressions of this figure, just having him out of the box, in hand, doing a little bit of posing, doing a little bit of movement, I'm pretty impressed with it. And I am really glad with the choice of making Ghost the SDCC exclusive. He is one of my favorite characters from classic MW2 as well as the new MW2, so yeah, I mean, he's a good choice. He's a fan favorite. I also really appreciate that this is just an exclusive deco of the character, and then the just standard version of Ghost with pretty much all the same accessories, including this nice soft goods cape, is coming out in the main line. So don't worry if you can't get your hands on this specific version. There is going to be a mainline release that's just a different deco of this uniform. I think it's without the camouflage and in more of like a drab gray. So yeah, this is a perfect choice for SDCC. It's a popular character, it's got a unique deco, and it's not going to make people feel like they're missing out on having a specific character in their collection. Now, I'm sure that this deco is based on an in-game skin that you can get. I don't know the names of like any of those skins. It's just Ghost. So it's Ghost in camouflage. So this version is just him in a woodland BDU. It looks really good, and honestly, the paint deco here is really impressive because all of those little individual, pieces of camouflage are paint hits. That's a lot of work to get that done, and it does wrap around fully to the back of the figure. That's just really awesome to see. But there's also all sorts of little things, like the little British flag on his shoulder there, all of the intricate tattoos going on his armor. including even inside the joint there, which is just so impressive. There is another Union Jack here on his cloak, on his cape, and then coming around to the side where he has this little grenade on his chest rig, that even has printing on it that states what type of incendiary grenade that is. And even around back, underneath the cloak, the straps on his harness have more camouflage paint deco. So this figure is just loaded with incredible little paint details like that, which I am so impressed with. In fact, I'm just noticing here also on his weapon, you can see there a little 04 printed on there. So like a sticker, you know, like the stickers you can put on in game. There's one of those on the side of his weapon, and that's just so small, so tiny, but so cool. Of course, this wouldn't be Ghost without that menacing face mask printed on there. That is done in really nice relief, and if we get it angled into the light just right, I think you'll be able to catch those painted pupils in there. That's a really nice, eerie effect with this Ghost. This one has a much more menacing look to him than the other Ghost from the first Modern Warfare 2, and I think with those eyes just kind of glowing out from behind the actual skull on his mask, I think that's just kind of a really cool effect going on there. He also has this little bit of rope clipped to his belt and some interesting little sculpted accessories there. I really don't know what those are meant to represent, but still the added detail and the painted rope here are really good to see. It's always appreciated when a tactical character just has lots of odds and ends that would help him in the battlefield. So then let's talk accessories on this figure. There's actually quite a bit to go over here, so we'll just jump right into it. First and foremost, he has his primary weapon, some sort of standard like M4 variant here. Like I mentioned, there's that little printed 04 sticker there, but there's also paint hits with the tan coloration. I believe this is cast in black, and then there's just like the tan coloration hit over top of that. There's also some silver dry brushing going on, which is really nice to bring out the little details. You can see it there on those rear iron sights, as well as around here on the magwell. And speaking of the magwell, you actually have a removable magazine here, which is a really nice little detail to have. That too has some silver dry brushing on it. And you do get a second magazine, one of which can be put here in the pouch on his chest harness. And right next to that, you have this radio that can also be put in one of the pouches. There's some really nice printing detail on those little buttons there and the little screen. Even around back, you have just a little bit going around there. The sculpt work on this is very nice. All the buttons have a very nice relief, and there's even some cross hatching there in the speaker portion. And around back, you even have some little details there as well. I do really appreciate that that can be stored right back on his harness. And really the only thing that can't be stored on the figure itself are the additional hands. And that's always a nice feature to see with figures, because small accessories can be lost. And if you can just store them all on the figure, plant it on a shelf, and you just know where all the accessories are at any given time, that is a really big feature in my mind, because it just makes things a lot easier when you're storing figures or displaying figures. As you saw there, he also has this sidearm, some sort of Colt 1911. This is also cast in black, but it has a dark gray paint on the slide as well as on the grips, and then a silver dry brush over top of that, which looks so good. Again, it's those little details that just add so much depth to a small accessory like this, and it does not go unnoticed. Like his in-game appearance, that just goes into a slot between his plate carrier and his ammo pouches there. It might be able to be seated a little bit deeper than what I'm able to get it here, but I'd say that's pretty close to how it is in the game. And then also, I would certainly count this as an accessory. He has this tunic or his cloak with a little hood back here, which I don't believe is functional. No, that's sewn down. That's okay. I don't really need that to be functional. In fact, usually if they are functional, they don't always work. Soft goods at a smaller scale are far less functional than you would think, and so usually they just kind of like clump up and look weird. So having that stitched down so that it actually lays flat on his back is a very appreciated little detail there. Once again, it has this little printed Union Jack flag on it to represent, you know, his home country, his home team. And the choice of fabric here is a really nice one because it's a little bit heavier, and so it does drape very nicely across the figure, across his shoulders, and down the back. Sometimes with these soft goods, you know, they'll just kind of like flow out like this just because they're not heavy enough. This is a very nice heavy fabric, and so if you lay it down like that, it's gonna stay pretty nice and laid down on the figure. If for some reason you may not want to display him with it, you can also just loop it over the head like so. And that is how we're gonna have the figure to take a look at the articulation, because it just gives you a better look at the joints and the movement and the posability. Before we do that though, there are two more accessories to take a look at. We have a closed fist hand and an open gripping hand. What is on the figure now are just dual trigger hands. He has one there and one there. All of these are in and out flex joints, and to swap them out, it's as simple as popping one joint out, and popping the other one in. Now with that open gripping hand, we can have him more properly grasping his weapon there. Now I will make a note, I did notice that this was cast in a similar plastic to the Spartan collection weapons, which does mean if you have them in more extreme poses for long periods of time, they can sometimes get a little bit misshapen, and all you need to do to fix that is just put them in some hot water and readjust to get it back to its original shape. That happens with any soft weapon, so it's worth noting what these are constructed out of, but it's nothing that's terribly unique to this figure. It seems to be how most companies are dealing with weapons these days and making sure that they're not too brittle. Now then, for the articulation on this figure, I'm really excited to dig into this just to see how this new figure holds up, because again, this is an all new line for Jazwares. It's not like it's able to reuse parts from Fortnite or parts from Halo. This is brand new. This is brand new, hot off the press. And like I said, it's exciting to dig into an all new figure and take a look at this for the first time to kind of see what we can expect with future figures from this line. So up at the top, we have a hinge and swivel at the head. You can actually pivot this all the way around in a full 360 degree of motion. You can hinge that forward to there, and you can hinge it all the way back to there. There's still a good range of motion there that can allow for dynamic posing and getting him into just about any position that you need him to be in. Shifting down to the shoulders, we actually have a hinge and swivel as well as a butterfly joint, so that shoulder can shift forward and backwards. It can spin all the way around, and it can pivot up to 90 degrees there. Just below that, there's also a bicep swivel, which is really nice to have there. And the elbows have a very interesting construction. I don't know that I've ever seen a single jointed elbow done in this style. However, it can crunch into just past 90 degrees there. And this is pinless, which is really nice to see on a figure like this, not only with these tattoos, but also just having exposed skin. Having that and having that be pinless is really awesome. And also, of course, I still can't get over the tattoos continuing into that joint there on the front and also on the elbow in the back. Now, when you do flex it forward, that part there is exposed, but I feel like that's all right. You're not going to typically see that in most poses, and also I wonder if that also could have caused some paint rub and things like that. So just having it painted here and also painted here on the front facing side of the arm is very, very much appreciated. And then of course all the wrists are hinge and swivel, so swiveling them all the way around in and out on both wrists. I will say, taking it out of the box initially, this joint was really loose and that kind of scared me. However, I found out that the joint had just come unseated while it was in the packaging, so I just popped it back in, and now you can see that joint is perfectly fixed where it should be. That said, this does use a similar torso construction to the Spartan collection figures, so you have a ball joint up at the top, really wide range of motion there, forward, back, all kinds of crunch every which way. And then this piece down here is a separate molded piece. However, it does not spin very much. You get a little bit of rotation, but not enough to really warrant it as a part of articulation. I think the ball joint at the top here gives you more than enough range of motion there, so I don't feel like there's any loss there at all. Down to the hips, you have a ball joint and a thigh swivel, so you can pivot those hips forward to there, back to there, and then really nice splits outward. The knees are double jointed, so you can pivot them all the way back into there. Hinge and rocker at the foot, but because of the sculpt for the legs here, that can only go back to there and only forward to there, but you can pivot that side to side to get it, flat with the surface of the ground. I do think the articulation here will vary figure to figure based on the type of sculpt, so it's a little bit limited on Ghost here with the pant legs coming down. Maybe with another figure that has, knee-high boots or shin-level boots, something like that would allow for more articulation range on those boots, so I'm not really worried about that joint. And then we have a little toe joint here, which can crunch into there and crunch down just back into like a standard relaxed position. So with those points of articulation, we can get Ghost into some really nice dynamic poses. I am especially impressed that we can get him into a full kneeling position. That's kind of one of my metrics for seeing how a figure poses on the shelf or for toy photography. I really value being able to get 1/12 and 1/18 figures into a kneeling position. He can do a pretty good job of shouldering his weapons as well. Something else that's interesting to note is that this whole chest harness is actually a molded soft plastic piece, and underneath is actually just a blank torso of sorts. I'm sure that comes in handy both in the mold making process as well as just for, parts reusage for future characters. There's a lot of reasons why they do that, and I think that's the best way that they could have done a character like this. If they had done this all molded together, I think it would have been a lot harder to actually put the things in the pouches and have them stay, because it would be a different type of plastic, and also this means more modularity between characters. If they ever want to do another version of Ghost, but maybe his chest harness has changed, well, now they have a base figure. They just have to swap out the soft plastic piece. Now let's do a quick size comparison between this new Jazwares Call of Duty figure and some other 1/12 military scale figures. Here he is next to a G.I. Joe classified rock and roll on the left and a Valaverse trooper on the right. Just looking at it here, these figures fit in pretty darn well together. I feel like, you could make this your own little version of Task Force 141. You got like a basic trooper here. Maybe this is a named character here. We can even toss in a Spartan Mark 7 and just see, oh hey, maybe he's fighting in the war against the Covenant too. You never know if there's going to be some sort of crossover universe in the future between 343 and Activision. Here he is next to the 2019 Captain Price from McFarlane and my other custom figures that I used that base figure for. I made a Ghost and a Soap using the older McFarlane figures. If you have this figure in your collection and you want to get these new Jazwares figures, the scaling is pretty acceptable. I would say that if you have these on a shelf next to each other, they would make a really nice team and they wouldn't stand out too much from each other. Now for one of the more crucial comparisons, I do actually have the McFarlane Ghost from Modern Warfare, the 2019 edition of the game. However, this figure stands out with some unique details because not only is it from the previous iteration of the game, it's also based, at least as far as I can tell, off of concept art. So he has a shorter, soft plastic tunic on the back there, and his mask actually has a sculpted in jawbone, so as though it's like the jawbone of the skull that is attached to his mask. So there are some subtle differences apart from just the overall detail, sculpt work, and articulation. However, as far as scale goes, these two do fit in quite nicely together. There are of course going to be differences when you compare figures like McFarlane to figures like these from Jazwares. This I feel like is a much more toyified action figure. It's much more based on durability and accurate articulation, and so it forgoes some of the detail, some of like the weathering and paint washes that you see here on the McFarlane figure. Whereas on this figure from McFarlane, the detail is very, very nice. However, it comes at a more expensive price point, and some of the articulation is sacrificed for the sculpt work, especially when they tried to implement these seamless legs. I was never very fond of them. The range of motion was really limited, and I don't think it's a totally fair comparison. Yes, you can compare two figures and say which one might be better on a shelf or in a collection. However, I don't want to compare them one to one because they are by different brands. They have different intentions behind them. This one I feel like is far more a collectible action figure meant to be more just put on display and that's it. Whereas this from Jazwares is far more of an action figure toy. And while it may lack some of the more intense detail of this figure, I feel like this is much more enjoyable to pose around and I'm not afraid of breaking it. So with all that being said, let's kind of go over some final thoughts on this figure. First and foremost, I'm really excited to see what Jazwares will do with this Call of Duty line. There's a lot of characters, a lot of games, there's a lot that they could do here. I think that they have a good basis in the 1/12 scale with things like the Spartan collection. So with all those and the combined experience, I think they know what they're doing with 1/12 scale figures. Of those revealed for Wave 1, I think Ghost has to be my favorite. He has the most promising looking paint apps, accessories, and just overall detail. Plus, he's a fan favorite character, so even if you maybe don't want to collect Call of Duty figures, I know a lot of people that would love to have a Ghost action figure, so it's a real standout one here. It's the perfect choice for SDCC, and honestly, again, I think a lot of people will pick up at least the Ghost figure. I love the amount of accessories we're getting and the swappable hands. That is a really nice feature to see here. I love the detail that's going on with these paint apps, like the tattoos on Ghost, the little flags. All of those are great, and even the camouflage is great, despite the fact that I'm not a terribly big fan of the camouflage as a whole, but that's more an aesthetic thing and not something that comes down to the toy makers at Jazwares. It's just, I'm not a huge fan of this skin for Ghost. One thing I would like to see improved would just be the quality control on some of the paint apps. I noticed some overspray and some kind of issues with where paint apps were or weren't, and some awkwardness there. It would be nice if that quality could just be improved upon so that the final product in hand was just a little bit cleaner, a little bit crisper with those paint apps. I think we see a pretty solid base here as far as articulation goes if they carry things over to other figures. I know with Spartan Collection we've had problems with the knees in the past. I do think that these work pretty well for what they are. Overall, I think the articulation accomplishes what it needs to. It can be hard when you're dealing with really bulky things things like these ammo pouches and stuff to make a figure that can articulate around them to hold their weapons. And that may mean certain things like the shoulders being a little bit disproportionately out from the torso. And I'm not a huge fan of that, but if it's necessary for good posability, a small tweak like that is okay in my book. Hopefully, as the line goes on, you know, when it reaches Wave 2, we might see some improvements, and then Wave 3, we'll see some more. That's kind of the track record we've seen with things like Spartan Collection. So as time goes on with this line, little issues, like I said, with the paint quality or something like that, could be improved upon with different iterations in the line. So there we have it. That's my review of this all new Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Ghost action figure from Jazwares. Of course, this is the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive version, so the one we see in stores will be slightly different. But the base figure is going to be the same, and that's kind of what I wanted to focus on in this figure, because this is kind of what we're going to be able to expect with this new line from Jazwares. So I want to hear from you down in the comments. How do you feel about this new line? Are you liking how it's looking so far? Did you place any pre-orders? I will have links down in the description of this video to the Amazon pre-orders for the mainline releases from this figure line. But yeah, I want to hear how you're feeling about it. I know we only have promo pictures for the other figures, so it's a little bit early to make some final judgments, but yeah, let's hear from you. What do you think about a new line for Call of Duty? But anyways, that's where I'm wrapping up this video. So as always, there's a link down in the description to my Instagram where I post toy photography. As always, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and leave a like on this video. I do so much appreciate that. If you made it this far in the video, thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful evening, noon, or night, depending on when you're watching this video, of course. And as always, I'll be sure to catch you all in the next video.